Hi everyone. This week on the podcast, it is something slightly different. This week, my friend Gavin Beth has stolen my microphone and it is a dialogue with me. So I hope you enjoy this episode getting to know me a little bit better, my journey as an interior designer and how I started a tech company. We talk about so much and it was a really fun chat. It's a slightly longer episode, so I hope you can hang around and enjoy it. The other thing I wanted to mention was we are having our first ever live recording of the podcast on the 19th of September at the Satara showroom here in Sydney. We have put together a great panel of Sally Rhys-Jones, Lynne Bradley and Gemma Gillett from Studio Gemma to discuss everything interior design, growing a business, the stresses of having a business, the fun of having a business, and it's just going to be a really great evening. I'm really looking forward to getting to chat to these designers again. They've all been on the podcast before and I really could have talked to them for ages, so I feel very lucky that I get to chat to them all again. So I'm going to put the link to the event in the show notes. It's a free event, but just grab your ticket so that we know that you're coming, and I hope that you can join us. Hi, I'm Beth Beesky, the founder of More Time to Design and your host of the Design Dialogues podcast. I've been a designer for the last 12 years and I've run my own studio for 5, and I know how hard it is to run a successful business. You not only need to be great at designing, but you need to be great at all the other things as well. I created More Time to Design, a software platform to help designers run efficient studios, and I've created the Design Dialogue podcast to help us all learn together. Each week, we will meet professionals who are at the top of their game doing things that help us run our studios. We'll have conversations with social media managers, interior design mentors, copywriters, stylists, photographers, suppliers, and also designers who have been in the game for a long time and who have such a wealth of knowledge to share. I hope that each week you feel inspired and informed at the end of each of our design dialogues. So join me for the Design Dialogue podcast.
Hi everyone, it's Gavin from Concepts by Gavin Beth. Today I've stolen the More Time to Design Dialogue podcast microphone and I've got an incredible guest joining us and you won't know who it is. I will share it with you now. It's Beth Bixby from More Time to Design. Beth, thank you for sharing your microphone with us and for joining us on today's podcast.
Hi, Gavin. Thank you so much for having me.
And what a twist. But look, this has all come up for everyone that's listening. Myself, within the design industry, wanting to know more about what Beth's journey is, and I almost want to flip the role today so we can all learn more about Beth's journey, how she's supporting us within the broader design community, and just about the journey, because she spends so much time with us and focusing on us. So let's flip it over. So Beth, the first question that I have for you, what can you see out your window today?
What can I see out my window today? So I can see out my window, I'm very fortunate to live kind of in a really leafy part of Sydney. And so I look out onto kind of a tree canopy. So I sit kind of up above the trees and it's just beautiful. And today it's actually sunny, which is nice. We've had some really grey, wintry weather. But so I have my beautiful kind of almost treehouse look to look out on.
Absolutely, and I can see there in the image, guys, the beautiful natural light that's flooding through there. What a beautiful space to be working in.
Yeah, it's I'm very fortunate.
And especially with the treescape as well,
Yeah.
bringing the greenery in. So moving on, a little bit more about yourself. Where did your journey start within the design industry, and how has that impacted on where you are today?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's go all the way back to the early days. So, and I always think this is so funny. I think there should be like an on all entry kind of for any design courses. This question: did you redesign your bedroom as a child? And I definitely fell into that category. I have a very clear memory of my parents renovating our house. I reckon I was like maybe 8 or 9, and begging mum to allow me to buy this horrendously daggy now, but I thought it was just amazing. Like wallpaper trim to go around the top underneath the cornice, and then also spending days stenciling these bows around the top of my ceiling. Like I just thought it was amazing. And so kind of I did that. I remember my dad is, in the engineering field and was always tinkering in his shed. And I remember working with him on I want a CD tower, Dad. And so we'd like build a CD tower, and like you'd get, the Perspex shelves cut for me and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember kind of, even as a little girl, having that kind of thing going on, but never really thought much of it as a career. And so when I left school, I um, went down the path of medical sciences and was at
Okay.
uni doing that, and thought I was going to be a doctor, and very, very different.
So you went through and finished a degree.
Yep, finished a
Kind of.
degree and was like, not really for me. So I got to the end and I didn't know really what I wanted to do, because I knew I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I signed up for a floristry course, and so trekked into Pearson's on Oxford Street and did their course. And I think at the time my parents were like, "So what exactly are you doing with your life now?" But it was really early on in that course, and I remember very distinctly the teacher going to me, "You really get color. Like you just get it." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I do." And that was really the start of me going, actually, it was the start of me realizing that I saw color and design in a way that other people didn't, or other people around me didn't. And I was like, okay. So then that led to me really loving floristry, and I ended up actually buying a business and
Oh wow.
had two florist stores for about 8 years. And that was really, as much as that was my creative journey, it was really the start of my entrepreneur business journey. And so having two florist stores in your 20s is quite the learning curve. Floristry is one of the most unglamorous jobs you can imagine. It's really hard work. It's at all the wrong hours of the day. And I learnt so much at that doing that. And I learned a lot about floristry, obviously, but I
Yes.
learned so much about business and what it took to really run a successful business. And so I had those for about 8 years, and then I kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm done. I've kind of got everything out of this that I wanted. And so took myself off to Enmore and studied interior design at Enmore. And yeah, that's how I got into design. And so from there, I kind of went along and started my interior design journey.
And so you started at Enmore full time,
Yeah, part time. So I
part
did
time.
part time.
Yep.
Was in the process of kind of when I started the course, we still had the florist shops, and so
Okay.
I was like, I'm just going to do this and see how it goes. And then just really, really randomly, I was about halfway through my course, and we did a wedding, and the bride lived in New York, the groom was in the Navy, and neither of them were going to be in Sydney until about 10 days before the wedding. And so I pretty much spent the whole time planning this wedding with the mother, who was one of the local real estate agents.
Okay.
And she kind of knew I was studying interior design and all of that kind of stuff, because we'd get chatting. And then the wedding was in December, it was just before Christmas. And we came back from like January break, and the mum and the daughter walked in and they were like, how would you like, we think we'd like to buy the shop. And I was like, you know what? That's that's going to work for me, kind of thing. And
Mm,
so
mm.
that was kind of the end of that, and we sold that, and it was kind of just one of those things. The universe kind of brought it all together. So yeah, and so then just kept studying, and yeah. So then, um, while I was studying, and while I had the florist shops, there was a lady who had another store. She was like a homeware store. And I distinctly remember sitting in her store one day having a coffee, and I was flipping through Vogue Living, and there was an article about Blaney North.
Mhm.
And I said to the lady, I said, I'd love to work for her. And the lady and her sister was in corporate land and was like, just email her. Just, what do you got to
Yep.
lose? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? She could not reply. I was like, oh God, I don't know. Like, okay. Um, and I did. And I emailed Blaney and I said, I love what you do. This is my skill set. Do you have a job? And she wrote back and she was like, no, but not right now, but I'd love to stay in touch. And so we did. And so I just kind of every few months would email her and go, hey, it's just me again. Any job now? Um, and so I think it was about 9 months later, and she emailed me and she said, I've got a role. It's to do with with her furniture collection.
Mhm.
Um, would you be interested? And that's how I got my first job in interior design with Blaney.
Good on you. Persistence, eh?
Persistence. And
Yeah.
yeah, and just asking.
Mm.
And it wasn't because I had an amazing portfolio. I really didn't. Hadn't really done anything. But yeah, it was just persistence, and it was showing those transferable skills,
Yep.
which I think if you're coming to interior design as a second career, like do not discount the experience you've got from other roles.
100%. And it's sometimes just because someone's not perfect on paper doesn't mean they're not actually perfect for the role of what they bring from
Yeah,
experience and
exactly.
passion and as a team member as well.
Yeah.
A little bit earlier when we were talking about florists, you're mentioning we. Who else? Who else was involved in the forest with you?
It's okay. So I'm going to clarify this right now. Whenever I say we, it's me. I
Okay.
am so bad at I say it about the software as well, and I'm like, it's really the royal we. So it's
Yep.
just me. It was on my, I mean, to be fair, my dad helped a lot, like delivery driver, or like he'd do the markets for me some days, kind of thing. So dad was definitely involved. But yeah, it was just me. So
Oh, good on you. Good on.
yeah.
So essentially, besides studying, you've been self-employed.
Yeah, there's like a window of time with
Yep.
Blaney and Greg, but yes, for
Mm.
most of my working life, I've been self-employed.
Before we move on to a little bit more about the Blaney, and we've just heard
Yeah,
a word by the name of Greg, a name by the name of Greg. So let's head there in a sec. Um, I know you've got a beautiful family. Can you share quickly with us
yeah,
a little bit more about the personal side of Beth before we really dive into the
yeah,
business
of
side of
course.
things?
So I'm married to Ed, who is wonderful, and we've got two kids. So we've got Harrison, who is 6.5, and Alex, who is nearly 4.
Oh wow.
And my parents live in South Australia, so they live in rural South Australia. So quite often we go there in the school holidays, and it's the perfect. They live quite near the Clare Valley, and so it's the perfect break from Sydney life. Like I love Sydney, I love the busyness of it, I love all of it. But then going there and just being able to live a slower life for a couple of
Hmm.
weeks is really lovely. So
Oh,
yeah, so
nice.
I'm in the thick of young kids, working mum, juggling school and preschool and daycare and swimming lessons and ballet and soccer and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a busy, hectic life, but wouldn't have it any other way.
But it keeps you real, right? Because
Oh,
and it's almost taking us away from that social
yeah.
perfect world
Oh,
that
100.
we do have the pressures of AM and PM and the sick kids through during the day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like my parents are, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but I think understanding, um, like, so I'm really driven. Well, one of the things that I think is really important is working out what success means to you. And so I, my parents worked really hard their whole working life, and they were really working hard to give me and my brother the best life that they could. And but that meant for a lot of the time, so my mum was a nurse, and I remember really like vividly, dad would leave for work, mum would get home from night shift, she'd run us all around to school, she'd come home and sleep, then she'd pick us up, and then she'd go off to night shift, and dad had come home from work. And it was like this constant, just like juggling, and like who's got the children and who's doing what, and we had grandparents involved, and like it was just, I remember very distinctly that pressure of constantly, of working parents and not being like, I could always see with mum and dad, they were always torn. It was like, oh, like we need to work because we want to be able to provide them with the best that we thought. But at the same time, that meant they were missing out on time with us. And by no means did we have a deprived childhood. Like it was a phenomenally charming childhood. But I distinctly remember that struggle. And so that very much guides me in a lot of the decisions I make about my work, because I do want to be able to, I just don't want to have that tension. And so I think that is something that I use as very much as a guiding kind of principle around, can I go to that meeting at 5 p.m. at night? Most probably not, because I need to get to after school care or daycare, whatever it is, kind of thing. And you do start living your life within like, a 10 to 2 kind of schedule. But I also know it's only for a short period of time. Like my kids are little for a short period of time, and then we're going to change and we'll do something else, and there'll be different limitations or different kind of drivers. So that kind of like the people behind me, they play a really big part in my business life.
And I think that sort of almost shines through because you do, on screen and in person, because we know one another sort of personally at design events and things. You are very genuine, and you do come across as caring, right? To actually ask how everyone is. So I think that's a beautiful thing and an underpinning of how you're giving back to the design industry as well is actually family and nurturing, if you like. And it's perfectly okay for us to almost have these two lives. One is personal life and one is a business life, and the two can actually combine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think that like I think that's been something that I've really had to, I suppose, the benefit of age, you kind of look back and go, oh, like that's like, is that important right now? And, like even to the point where like, I've got small kids, but a couple of years ago I was the sole carer for an elderly relative. And, we went through the battles of Alzheimer's and nursing homes and all that kind of stuff. And that, for anyone who's been through that, that is the hardest thing you will ever do. But I was like, my business really, in a way, my business almost had to come to a stop. But I was like, and there was a real tension. There were many days when I was like, oh my goodness, like I just want to have 5 minutes to work. But I also knew that it's like, this is just another season. This is, I'm so fortunate that I'm in that position that I could do that. But I think understanding what your drivers are and what is your definition of success when you are in a period of time when you're not going to have maybe a full 40 hours of work to do available
Yes.
to you,
Yep.
then choosing things that are going to fit within that, which still allow you to ultimately say, well, I've had a successful year, is really important, because otherwise you're going to constantly feel like you're failing, which is awful.
Yeah, look, I 100% agree with you, and especially within this industry as well, which I'll touch base on a little bit later. But I think it's very much the whole, is it a hobby? Do we do what we do because we enjoy it side of things? But where does it actually need to level up as a business,
Yeah.
and we do have a business mind, and we actually need the systems and the processes and the strategy to support ourselves financially, to support our family, and actually live a comfortable life without it being extravagant.
Yeah.
and but still keeping the Instagram
Yeah.
or nice and pretty. Back onto the career. So, how long did you work for Blaney?
I was at Blaney for about 3 years, I think.
Okay.
And so my role at Blaney's it was part interior design and part working on her furniture collection. And when I first took the role, I was like, sure, like, how hard can that be? Um, Within the first week, I remember having a call with the freight forwarder. I didn't even really know what a freight forwarder was, and I was
Hmm.
like, caught up and like, Josh, hi, yep, Beth, I'm the new girl at Blaney North, kind of thing. And within about 5 minutes, he was like, you know what? I'm gonna come in and see you, and we'll sit down, and and I was like, oh wow, like I knew nothing about shipping furniture all over the globe. And so a lot of my role was developing the furniture, but also learning the manufacturing process. So the pieces were manufactured in China with these
Hmm.
amazing craftsmen. Like, just, I had the privilege of going over to the factory many times, and I was
Okay.
always blown away by the craftsmanship of what was being produced. And so, yeah, spent 3 years on that. We had um, pieces of furniture going all over the world. If you need a removalist in London, I know a good one. Like, just stuff like that where you kind of like, wow. But it was once again, the business side of it became a big part of it. So, for
Hmm.
example, you'd be bringing in fabric from Italy, and then you're like, well, hold on, like, it's better if it's going into China directly, but you can't do that. It's got to go via Hong Kong. But then we've got the relationship with the distributor here in Australia, which we don't want to jeopardize that relationship. But actually, it'd be much better if we bought it off the distributor in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So, learning that and how to balance that, and lots of different things. It was an amazing experience, and I will. I learnt so much at my time there, and we worked on, one of the main projects that we worked on for our own, like for the furniture for our own projects, was where we had about 180 custom pieces of furniture,
Wow.
and we had over 250 different pieces of fabric on those furniture pieces, and coordinating that and making sure it all arrived, and how can we get those into the smallest number of containers.
Mm.
And then the project was on the top of an apartment building. We only had access to the goods lift on a Saturday, and to get 180 pieces of furniture up 45 levels is really hard.
But when you break, so my mind's thinking even from the initial outset, the documentation that has to be put in place to make sure the right fabric and the right color is applied to the right piece and on the right
Yeah,
arms and the legs of
yeah,
this, all the way through to the complexity of the team getting it actually in and installed, right?
yeah,
So, the process and the documentation has to be right,
yeah,
because if something's wrong, not only the lead time that it takes to get something redone
yeah,
correctly,
yeah,
but then the cost of that it actually puts to business, and the reputation that it
yeah,
tarnishes to the business as well. So
yeah.
what an incredible way to really like be almost thrown into the deep end of the
Oh,
pool. And
massive deep end, massive deep end. But it was amazing, and like, I wouldn't have had that experience. Like, I couldn't have even dreamt up
mm,
how you would get a job to do that kind of thing. And Blaney was amazing. She kind of put a lot of trust in her team. It was a really phenomenal group of designers that we worked with there. And yeah, it was a real kind of a massive learning curve, but as
mm,
well, Blaney was able to see the business skills that I had could transfer into this role. And yeah, it was great. It was so much fun, so much fun. But really, again, kind of that is where I'm honing those skills of, okay, you got to have your systems and processes in
yeah,
place. Otherwise, the chair that you thought that's going to be in blue velvet is going to come out with a red polka dot on it or something.
And it's also keeping everyone through the process accountable as well when there's documentation attached to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And just as well, like even navigating the the language barrier. So
Mm.
um how we could communicate something to the factory in China in a way that they understood, but then was also kind of people here would kind of like the way it all kind of came together. There was just so many moving parts, but
Yeah.
yeah, heaps of fun.
And then all that slowly changed,
Yeah.
and you've obviously taking on. So what you were there about 3 years? Did you say?
Yeah, about 3 years, I think.
All right.
Yeah, so about
Uh,
3 years, and then yeah, was ready for a change,
mhm.
and so then my next role was with Greg Natali, and
Oh,
was his general manager. So
okay.
leading a team of 15, and once again, he very much saw the business skills, and that was kind of what he was wanting. He had, Greg's got a very dynamic business. He's got the design side of it, but then he has such a strong product business side of the business
Mm,
as well.
mm,
And that was really where it was a really interesting role. So the general manager role was a new role he had created
okay.
because he knew that he was getting to that point in his studio where he's like, I need someone to kind of help funnel the stuff up to me.
Hmm.
And so that was a really interesting job kind of thing. Just once again working on amazing projects with amazing designers, and once again kind of seeing how important systems and processes were. Like,
Yeah.
I was at Greg's 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So, kind of before a lot of the software solutions that we have in play now
Hmm.
were available. And so we were still very much doing, like, I remember we'd have a Monday whip meeting and you'd be frantically kind of pulling together this Word doc where it was like walking
Yes.
around to everyone's desk going, where you up to, where you up to, kind of thing, and then updating. And it's like so inefficient.
Mm.
But that's how a lot of people did it back in the day,
Yep.
and running Excel, like schedules off Excel and all that kind of stuff, which Excel is not designed to build a schedule on.
And sadly, a lot of people still use it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a better way, people.
That's
But
right.
I think, yeah, my time with Greg was amazing. Like, Greg is like a phenomenal designer, and um, yeah, it was a really interesting time. But once again, just kind of honing those business skills and that
Yep. Yep.
studio leadership skills, and seeing, okay, like, and it was a different skill. So, like, with a team of 15,
Mm.
you need a strong pipeline of work. Like,
Yeah.
that's 15 mouths to feed. You cannot have someone sitting there twiddling their thumbs,
Mm.
because that is
Mm.
money that's just running out the
Yep.
door.
Yep.
And so working with Greg and going, okay, well, we need to be invoicing this project this month because we need it, for cash flow. So where is that designer up to, and do we need to put more resources onto that to make sure we get to that
Mm.
point?
Mm.
Or kind of saying to Greg, we need to get in some more work because we've got a gap
Yep.
here in a few months' time. So very much, I suppose, a different side of the business than I was doing at Blaney's,
Yes.
but very much kind of that overview of a studio and seeing how you've got to think about when you own the business. You very much have to have that mentality of thinking 3 6 months ahead
Yep.
to
Yep.
make sure you've got that pipeline of
Yep.
work so that it's not feast and famine.
Mm.
You've got enough for payroll, like all of that kind of stuff.
What an incredible start, though, or opportunity as well within that, where so many people within the design industry, I suppose, have had change of careers, if you like, and sort of, go and study and actually start on their own.
Yeah.
So they're sitting in the spare bedroom at home, and it's all about the focus, I suppose, is on the creative
Yeah.
side of things, not necessarily on the business. And there's, I suppose, the imposter syndrome of that's, being successful, but I can't charge that much and not sure
Yeah.
about what your real worth is.
Yep.
Where I suppose with these two incredible firms that you had the opportunity to work with and in, but most importantly, learn from.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Must
learned
be
so much.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, so much. And just even um like exposure to that level of work. Um that that was a real kind of amazing experience. And I think that designers that do start out on their own, I think that's awesome as well. But I think that having that base and seeing that, okay, this is how they do that and this is how they do that kind of thing, and exposure to different things. Like, I never thought I'd be able to organize a shipping container from, China to Sydney, but I could kind of rustle that up for you if you need
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But it was just truly both very amazing roles and very, very fortunate.
And must then gave you the confidence to then move on to.
Yeah. So then, um, so I left Greg's. Well, I fell pregnant, and
Okay.
I kind of knew that. So Harrison, my eldest, he was born in January.
Yep.
So I was working up to Christmas, and I thought, okay, we'll just see what happens. We'll take Christmas off, have a baby, and we'll see what happens. And I kind of knew that I couldn't go back to Greg's, in that I thought that the way that I worked at Greg's, the time, the distance, all of that kind of stuff, I was like, it's just not how I wanted to kind of go back to work.
Yep.
And so I'd always had the thought that I would work for myself. Once again, kind of coming back to what I wanted, how the kind of mum I wanted to be,
Mm-hmm.
and how for my kids. And so I was like, well, I think now's the time. And so I started the Navy Edit in about 6 years ago, actually, pretty
Oh
much
wow!
the day. Yeah. So,
Happy birthday.
yeah. And yeah, obviously, starting a business at the same time as having a small child is interesting. Don't know if I'd recommend it, but it's been really kind of, I suppose, a whole different type of learning curve, because learning how to get clients and learning how to build relationships with, I've been very fortunate. A lot of my work has come through relationships with architects and builders and all of the, like, those kind of referral people. So
Yes.
that's been really important. And I think it's such a crucial part to your business. Like, you can't just rely on word of mouth from the friend down the road. You've got to have multiple streams of referral people into your business, to make sure that pipeline is full. But yeah, so then had the Navy. Oh, I still have the Navy Edit. I've
Yes.
been doing that for 6 years, and it has been, it's been a really interesting 6 years. So we've had two children, we've had COVID, we've had pretty much 12 months of caring for an elderly relative. So
Mm.
there's been a lot going on in life, while I've
Yes.
also had this relatively new business going. And but at the same time, I've worked on some amazing projects, and projects that have been at achievable for me in my life season. So, I have a bit of a rule. I will cross the bridge, but it has to be it has to be a good
Yes.
project.
Yep.
Working with builders who I'm really upfront. I'm like, I can make it to a site meeting at 7 a.m., but you got to give me a bit of warning. I can't do it with like 12 hours notice.
Mm.
Um, and also, like, working with other mums and other dads who have kind of got the same, juggle. Like, I laugh at the moment. One of the builders that I'm working with, our daughters happen to go to the same preschool, and so I see him on the way in, and I see him at pickup. We don't talk about work. We go hi, and then sometimes we drive to the same work site and we start talking about
There
the
you go.
project.
Yep. Yep.
But it's really lovely because he
Mm.
knows, don't ask me, like, don't try and
Yep.
get me to site
Yep.
before 8:30, because we both know where we'll both be, kind of thing.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think that has been one of those really lovely things that have come out of working by myself, in that it doesn't mean that I haven't done beautiful work or anything like that, but it's been on my terms, which has been really important
Yes.
and crucial. I couldn't have done the last 6 years life-wise if I had still been working. Well, I most
Mm.
probably could have, but it would have been very, very stressful.
Well, I suppose it would have been a bit lacking as
Yeah.
well, and you wouldn't have been comfortable with what you're bringing to the work side of
Yeah.
things, or where was the compromise?
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
suppose this
Exactly.
facilitated you to actually be able to, do what you need to do within your personal life,
Yeah.
especially, bringing up, you know, the kids and
Yeah.
caring for loved ones,
Yeah.
and I always say that that's probably the most important thing that we do, because if we're not content within ourselves, then we're not bringing out the best version of ourselves to our clients and the staff in the studio, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And look, I suppose like to really get into the personal stuff, like so my mum had a stroke 7, 8 years ago. And she had a stroke, so she was a nurse. She had the stroke at the hospital. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
truly the only reason why she is alive, because
Mm.
she was able to get treatment so quickly. And she has some long, she'll have disability for the rest of her life
Yes.
because of this stroke. And that was a real moment for me, of going, oh my God, like it could happen at any
Mm.
time.
Mm.
And that really did solidify for me around, I don't want to have a stroke at work and that being like
Yeah.
the
Yep.
end. So,
Yep.
and I didn't want to leave anything on the table. I didn't want to have regrets. Like, that doesn't mean that would I do everything the same way? No, like there's heaps that I would change. But I just like what happened with mum and the long term effects of that to our family and everything like that. That's really solidified for me that it happened. Like mum's stroke kind of happened about 6 months before I left Greg's, and that
Mm.
really did. Um, that really was like, okay, actually, I don't want to have a regret around work,
Yep.
that would down the track when
And I
important.
suppose it encourages to reassess
Yeah,
what that word success actually means.
yeah,
And so the word
absolutely.
success doesn't actually have to be driven around our career.
Yeah.
It can actually be based around family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what it was. Like, so mum worked really hard her whole career. She loved being a nurse, and she was
Mm.
very, very good at it. But, and she was also of a generation that success was work success. Like, that was really
Yep.
kind of, I think, what that generation defined as
Mm.
success. And also that there was only really one way to work. Like, it was you're all in. There's none of this kind of, half or anything like that.
Yep.
Um, and so mum definitely missed out on a lot of stuff. She sacrificed a lot of stuff. But she was like, no, 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 this is this. And then she also thought, well, I'll retire one day and then that's when I'll do that stuff.
Mm. Mm.
And she didn't. She had a stroke and
Yep.
she's done none of it. And I think that's, um, if she could, I think she would say she wishes it was different. Um, and that really does kind of frame, that is the lens that I put through a
Yep.
lot of my
Yep.
decisions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
No, I think,
Yeah.
it's kind of, look, it's something that, um, yeah, like I think if anyone's been through that in a family member, whether it's
Yep.
a stroke or cancer or a heart attack
Mm.
kind of thing, like
Yep.
I think health things really do, whether it happens to you or it happens to a family member, it can really sharpen the focus.
And then where time is such a precious resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in personal life and in business as well, and realizing that how fragile it is,
Yeah.
and we're only here for a short time, and same with our loved ones. So we
Hmm.
do actually need to have that balance. I've had a very very similar scenario with a grandmother, and nursed her to her last moments as
Mm.
well, and I'm so fortunate that I was able to do that for her, and
Yeah.
I was at a point within business that I pretty well could put that on pause. So I really resonate to what you're saying there,
Yeah.
because as I said earlier, it comes across as the sort of person that you are and how approachable you are as a person as well. Um, I look at the moment from a Beth Bixby side of things and go, all right, now I see this incredible business of more time to design. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Because I almost look at it and go, have we actually transformed away from the Navy edit
Yeah.
into more a tech software driven business?
Which is such a natural progression for an interior designer. Like, you
Well,
know,
put another feather in the hat. So, talk to us a little bit more about now, I suppose, not necessarily the transition because the
yeah,
Navy edit's still there,
yeah.
but what is the underpinning and why was more time to design born?
So that's so there's lots of reasons why it was born. So I was like I love client work. I love designing and I can't ever imagine not doing that in some fashion. But I definitely, and I don't know if other parents of young children this will resonate with, but I really struggled with the demands of young children,
Hmm.
which is just constant, and the demands of clients. Like clients can be very demanding, even the nicest ones. They're very demanding. And I always imagined if you were, I don't know, an accountant or someone where you're just kind of doing something that's a bit more, there's like 10 steps to it. You do those 10 steps and then it's done. I always thought that would be more manageable. I have very good friends who are accountants and they're like, no, it's not like that at all. But that's the dream that I have. But I found I was getting to the point, like the business was maybe like 3 or 4 years old, and I was like, I just don't know if I can do the amount of client work that I would need to do financially to make the business viable and deal with the number of clients, the amount of demand that would be, along with the family stuff. I also knew the other limiter on that was that I really didn't have a desire to grow a team. I didn't like I'd been in a position where like I'd really been managing staff, whether it was my own in the florist business through to Blaney's and then at Greg's. I'd really been managing people for 15 years. And I was
Mm.
like, I just don't want to do that. Because once again, that's another layer of someone needing something from me constantly. And I just didn't
Yes.
really want to be there. And so I was getting to the point where I was kind of like, okay, what does the next work iteration look like? So there was that going on. And then the other thing that was happening, so I would have designers that I'd worked with at both Blaney's and Greg who, for whole heaps of different reasons, some of them had gone off and had babies and they'd started their own business. Some of them had just got to the point in their career where they were ready to start a business and go out on their own. I would have them contact me and actually also just other designers in the industry that I'd met who would contact me and say, so you know how when we were, back in the studio, you'd come and fix my Excel spreadsheet for me because I've stuffed up the formulas for the
Okay.
10,000th time? Can you talk me through that again? Or how do you do this? Or what should I be charging? Or so I had lots of people coming to me kind of wanting to know how to do the business side of a design studio.
Hmm.
All of these designers are phenomenal designers. Like a lot of them have been published since kind of thing. Like they are beautiful designers, but they had no idea how to run a business. None.
Yes.
And so I really started to think about, well, how could I kind of make that into like it kind of never was to the point where I was like, I'm gonna like I've got no desire to be a mentor or anything like that. But I
Hmm.
was like, what could I do? And so then also what was going on, I was like getting so frustrated because I'd have multiple software things going on and I was trying to find a platform that worked, looked at all the American ones and all that kind of stuff. And there just really wasn't anything on the market that I felt suited a small interior design studio.
Yep.
So like
Yep.
I was working on my own or possibly someone that had like a VA or a couple of other designers, but a
Mm-hmm.
small interior design studio. Everything was too big, too complicated, too over the top. Had stuff and that I would never use, but it would
Hmm.
be paying a lot of money for. And so I very randomly thought, I'm going to build it. I'm going to build the solution to my problem. And I messaged on Instagram an acquaintance that I knew from the years I had the florist store.
Yes.
And as you do on Instagram, I kind of would randomly get their posts. And the thing that I was always interested by when I knew them, he was a nurse, and I don't know exactly what she did, but over the time they had bought and renovated and sold properties. And for anyone who lives in the Shire in Sydney, you'll appreciate this, but I can also make the same kind of, there'll be lots of things. So they had their first house in Ingadine, and then they moved down the train line. So it was like Grays Point, then it was like Caringbah, and then they ended up on Burraneer Bay Road. So like they really made like, that's like if you're in the Shire, you've made it if you've
Yep.
kind of
You know.
worked your way down
Yeah.
Port Hacking Road. It's the same as if you're in like up on the North Shore. Like it's like going from Hornsby and waking your way down to like Neutral Bay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I was kind of like, that's really interesting that they've been able to do that. And they've had 4 kids. And I'm like, wow, they're really kind of hitting goals here. And then they started talking about this tech business that they had. And I'm
Okay.
like, oh, that's random. So they were the only people I knew that had anything to do with tech. And so I messaged them and I said, so, hi, how are you going? Haven't spoken in 10 years. I have an idea. I don't know if this is even remotely what you do. Can we chat? And she wrote back and they were like, this is exactly what we do. Let's have a
Oh,
chat.
wow.
And so that conversation was like end of March, early April. And we had our first product up and running by September. And the rest is history.
That's incredible. So once again, you've actually reached out and asked for collaboration, asked for opportunities,
Mm,
and it's then come your way. So what an incredible learning out of this so far is actually being prepared to ask to speak with people, asking is there positions available,
yeah.
and can you work together?
Yeah, yeah.
So
And you know, my best friend finds this hilarious because when I was at school and like, you know, I've known my best friend now for 30 years. Like, oh God, that's a long time. But she was like, when I was at school and at uni, I wouldn't say boo to a bee. Like, I was as shy as they came.
mm,
And then that was one of the best things that came out of the florist shop was I was like, for a long time, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't ask. I wouldn't follow up the quote for the wedding. I wouldn't do anything. And my best friend's mum had 3 hair salons in the Shire. And I just thought she was amazing. She had one in the Westfields, which just was super cool. Um, and she said something along the lines of to me, she's like, you gotta give it a bit more, you gotta be a bit more pushy. And I'm like, oh,
mm.
I don't know if I can do that. And it took me a long time to work out what being assertive was for me. So, and being comfortable with that. And I think that's one of the lessons that I've learned along the way. Someone can give you advice, but then you have to kind of, at first, that advice might feel like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that at all. But then just kind of sit with that advice and work out, well, actually, how can I do that I feel comfortable with? And, you know, for a long time, I'd almost have to give myself a little prep talk to go, okay, you can do it. You can do it. Like, send the email, like, do this kind of thing. Now I do it, like, you know, without even thinking about it. And,
Of
like, even
course.
to the point where sometimes my husband will be like, you did what? Like, and I'm like, I just asked. Like, why wouldn't I? And he's like, oh
Yep.
my God, like, you are just too much sometimes.
Well, it's
But
also then starting to sit, but you're confident, you're sitting comfortably and confident within your genre as well, right?
yeah,
And with,
exactly. And I
yeah,
think that's the thing. Like, the Beth of 15 years ago when I bought the florist shop, it's like you're in training this whole time. So it's like running a marathon. Like you can't just run a marathon, wake up one morning and decide to run a marathon.
mm,
But it's you exercise that muscle and you just kind of keep going, keep going. So and now I don't think anything of it. And you know, like when I started the podcast 12 months ago, like Jay, my best friend, she was like, do you remember how like you wouldn't even like pick up the phone? Like you just you didn't say anything for a long time.
yep,
And she's like, now you have a podcast. Do you understand how kind of it just doesn't quite fit? And
mm,
so I think though that's like one of my biggest bits of advice is if someone gives you advice and it feels like it's a wrong thing for you, work out how to make it feel right for you.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, sit with it. It's a bit like, I typically will have, I might have 10 people give me the same advice,
Yeah.
but for some reason it's just the language
Yes.
from one person and everyone else will say, Gavin, I've told you exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's sitting comfortable with it, but sometimes it's the right environment, the right time, the stress levels are a bit lower.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
actually absorb it and take it on. So from a more time
Yeah.
to design perspective, I'm thinking you've identified, from your learning
Yeah.
through your career until this point, but there's obviously as well that you're looking at that within other small design studios, and a lot solo, or as you're saying, sort of one or two people within design businesses, that they need assistance to help level up their business thinking, their organization, their systems, and their processes. So, how did you start breaking that down?
So it was very much based on how I worked, but also one of the things that I knew that I needed to get right was the platform needed to be not overly prescriptive in the way it was going to make you work.
Hmm.
Because the way I run my studio is different to the way you run your studio. And I am yet to meet two designers who run their studio in the same way.
Yep.
And a lot of the platforms were like fun. You had to work their way. And I was like, that's not going to work for me. It's not going to, and that's kind of why a lot of them hadn't worked for me. The other thing that I knew was that it had to be easy to use, so not lacking in detail, but it couldn't be overwhelming. I
Mm.
knew that this was going to go into people, it was going to be people who are either working by themselves or, small teams. They're time poor. They're not necessarily aware of what they actually need. So it needed to be a platform that they could open it up and they go, okay, I think I can navigate this. So, one of those things was like, it just had to be visually kind of easy to navigate. But then we also knew we had to offer lots of support. And
Mm.
that's been something that's been really crucial to how we run the business, in that I'm like, if you want to talk to me or one of the team, you can book in a call and you can get one of us.
Yep.
We've also we kind of put lots of support on the platform. So it's really quick, but it's also coming to every decision we've made, I've kind of gone, okay, if I have 5 minutes, can I work that out? So is there a video? Is there a link?
Hmm.
So that's kind of one of the guiding principles. And then really it was kind of like, what is going to help someone? So I made the decision early on that we were not going to look at anything that remotely looked like a design board or a mood board,
Yes.
because Canva and InDesign do that really, really, really
Mm.
well. And I don't need to recreate something that is going to be um, inferior
Yep.
to a product that's already on the market. So I made that decision kind of really early on. And that's kind of been a bit of a structure around it. We've looked at what's on the market, because the other thing as well is a lot of designers that come to look at the platform, they're kind of like, oh, it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that. And I'm kind of like, if you are looking for this unicorn that is going to do absolutely
Mm.
everything for you, then you are going to be looking forever,
Yep.
because accounting software is really good at accounting.
Mm.
I'm not an accountant, I'm an interior designer. So more time to design, I'm almost kind of very as passionate about the things we don't do as the things that we do, because I think that's where our strength is. We're
Yes.
not trying to dilute what we do and have kind of a mood board, but you can't do this and you can't do that, and you're going to end up going to do it on Canva anyway. So just go and do
Mm.
it on
Mm.
Canva.
Yep.
And then so it was really just kind of looking at my workflow and where were my big pain points. And so one of those was capturing client approval. The number of scribbled PDFs that I've got lying around from clients, was like, this is ridiculous. And they'll be like, I sent it to you and it's here and it's there. And it's like, oh my goodness. So that was like that was actually one of the first things I was like, I need to be able to capture client approval quickly
Yep.
and easily, and it be documented on the schedule there. So that there's stuff like that where I was kind of like, what are my pain points? What do the people who talk to me, what are their pain points? And we just went from there.
And you mentioned the word earlier, time.
Yeah.
And time is such a precious resource, right? And in business, and for me as well, communication.
Yeah.
So everyone that we deal with within our design world, whether it's clients or it's in the building industry, communication is so important. So be able to record and share that information, and look, and I think that something that gets spoken about so much within the design industry is, and the question is, how do you do your specifications? How do you record that? How do you share that?
Yeah.
And it's something from an Excel
Yeah.
perspective that you go, and it's probably the biggest thing that I've been searching for
Yeah.
within the 20 years of the Concepts by Gavin Hepper brand is specifications and moving out of Excel.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the other things that I really wanted to make sure, and like the specifications is part of this, is I wanted women, and it's a fairly female predominant industry,
Hmm.
but I wanted to give a tool to someone like me who might have young kids starting out a studio. I wanted them to have a tool that they could produce the schedule with a QR code, and they could walk onto site and feel really confident that their
Yep.
documentation was looking sharp. Because that's such a big challenge. If you are, the early days in a studio, you've got everything going on. You've got imposter syndrome. You've got like, oh my goodness, like what am I doing?
Mm.
Why am I doing this? You've got clients, like it's all going on, and you don't have those runs on the board where you're like, it's okay. This has happened before. I know how this will work out. And so a lot of, I suppose, what drives me with More Time to Design is equipping people with those tools to give them the confidence to walk onto site and go, no, here is the QR code, scan that, you will get the up-to-date schedule.
Yep.
So that is a process that if you've got that process in your business, that is giving you confidence to go onto site and say that and do that. Now, to do that from scratch is, who's got time for that? So More Time, like that's where it was kind of like, I want to just give people those tools that I know will make a difference in their business.
Yep. It's almost sort of handing, in a way, an opportunity to also gain a little bit of time back.
Oh, absolutely.
And within that is the bottom line grows, right?
Oh,
And I
totally.
think anyone within business, no matter what business you're in, of understanding systems and processes and recording and having data to look back on
Yeah.
is one of the most powerful things you can have within a successful business.
Oh,
But
totally.
it's for me within the design industry, it is really separating almost the creative design director
Yep.
within your mindset as a
Yeah.
business owner, and then actually putting the business owner cap on and actually looking at
Oh,
the
totally.
figures and growing business.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose, then the third hat is the marketing manager if you're not big enough to have a marketing team in, because we spend so much time within marketing, right?
And I think that like, oh my gosh, you've just like used all of my keywords. So like, for example, I think like I talk to lots of designers, and there's a couple of things. So I talk to designers who have been in the industry for 5, 10, 15 years, and they can do things really quickly. They know their stuff. But yes, they do the task really quickly, but then they've got no systems behind it to kind of really take advantage of that extra time that they've got
Mm.
in their business, because it takes so long for them to actually do like the last 5% of the task.
Yep.
And it's like, if you just built out the systems, then you would be able to, like, it blows my
Mm.
mind that it's not obvious. But then I also understand that, and this is something that I've kind of learned about myself, I can wear two hats. I very much have left and right brain going on,
Mhm.
where not everyone does. And I know that systems and processes stuff can feel very overwhelming and very tricky to navigate. And I think if I can make it clear to everyone, it is, yes, it's going to be daunting to start, but the more you do it, the easier it's going to get.
Yep.
But then the other thing as well is like, I think having data in your business to help you make those decisions, so you're not just doing it on a whim or a vibe. It's like, okay, I spent X amount of money on this form of marketing, and from that I can clearly see I've got 3 leads because I'm tracking my leads. So that's where but then I also spent X amount on this and I got nothing. So if you've got that data, you're going to be able to make much better decisions. And then there's just so much in it that it's kind of like, it's not just having systems and processes for the sake of having
Yep.
systems and processes. It's actually what you can then do with your business.
Mm.
And then the other thing is very much around, you can't treat it as a hobby. You can't, if you want to have a successful business that you don't feel burnt out by, you don't feel overwhelmed by, that you enjoy doing, you've got to set it up properly from the beginning. And if you haven't set it up properly from the beginning, it's never too late to start.
Oh, and I agree on that wholeheartedly. And at the same time, I look at it and go, within the last 10 years at least, you really do need that entrepreneurial mindset,
Mm.
and not be scared of hard work.
Oh, yeah.
Because owning small business is extreme hours, it's hard work, the balance of life is real, and
And you
especially
have to have amazing amounts of resilience, because 90% of people are going to say no to you. Like whatever it is, whether it's, I don't know, job applications or clients or supplies, whatever it is,
yeah.
90% of people are going to say no to you.
And the word no is actually only an opportunity to ask again in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't, and I think a lot of people in the design industry, and creative people in general
Yeah.
can be a little bit sensitive to
Yeah.
the word no and knockbacks and why didn't I win that job and blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But that's where the entrepreneurial mind comes into it, the organization and having data
Yeah.
to look at and actually grow.
Yeah.
So my recommendation, of someone that's been in this industry for over 20 years is don't be scared to change.
Mm.
Adopting new systems and processes and methods is only actually a positive thing. There's obviously a lot of noise at the moment in AI. I'd say let's not be scared of that,
Yeah,
but at the same time, let's actually stay to platforms that are known and proven and actually carved specifically for our market as well. So where do you sit on the whole AI thing at the moment?
I love it. So
Yeah.
I like you were saying, like I think that you just got to embrace it. It is something that is going to transform our lives in lots of positive ways. But I also don't embrace it just for the sake of embracing it. Like I use it for lots of different things, and like we're looking at how we can put it on the platform as well. But so like one of the things, I hate writing. I can't. I'm not. It doesn't come naturally, kind of thing. But I use ChatGPT all the time to kind of do a first draft for me. And once I've got a first draft, I'm fine. I can usually by the time I get to it, there's none of the first draft there. But I could spend 3 hours trying to do that first draft. And then I'll come back to it, and like my biggest downfall is I am a procrastinator if I don't want to do something. Like the amount of hours I can chew by, the random things I can get up to while I should be doing something. So that is something that has really improved my workflow, because I just use it as kind of my first draft and then I go. And there's lots of different things that I think that, like embracing AI in that way and kind of going, okay, it's not going to replace us. It's not going to, rule the world, but it's an amazing set of tools that I can have in my toolbox, which once again is going to help me be more efficient, going to help me run a better business.
Yep.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said, because if we do not explore and adopt and let it facilitate our day to day as well, and give us the confidence to move forward, with more efficiency, and guarantee you all of our competitors within our worlds will be using it and adopting it, and
Yeah.
will move forward just that little bit quicker and more so
Yeah,
polished
exactly.
in a lot of ways, and so the future is incredible, absolutely, and I'm so excited about the future of the interior design world and what our future clients' homes look like.
Yeah.
But there's another podcast for an hour and a
Okay.
half discussion of future living. But on
Yeah.
future, I want to know, Beth, what does the next 12 months look like for More Time to Design and the Navy Edit and the Beth family?
So the next 12 months. Well, for the Navy Edit, I've got one of my favorite projects of all time is coming out in a magazine in September, so that's really exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and I'm working on. I really don't do that much design work anymore, but I'm working with a client that I've been working with for a lot of years, and we are slowly renovating their whole house. So that is really.
Nice.
It's a really lovely. As I said, I can't ever imagine stopping doing design, but like this is enough, and it also allows me to be number one test dummy for More Time to Design. So
Yep.
my developers always hate the days when I'm doing Navy Edit work because they're like, more lists. So that's for Navy Edit. For More Time to Design and the Design Dialogues podcast. So the Design Dialogues podcast, like I love, love, love talking to the designers and finding out how they run their businesses and all that kind of stuff. And we have actually a live recording of an episode coming up in a few weeks with an amazing panel of guests. So that's really exciting and something that I'm looking forward to doing more of. And
Yeah.
then for More Time to Design, I'm really looking forward to talking to more and more designers. We are constantly adding and building new features into the platform. And a lot of those features are driven by feedback from designers. So that is something that I've been really kind of passionate about, is that like I'm almost just the vessel for them to give their feedback through and build. I want to build the platform that the users want, not the
Yep.
platform that I want. And so just kind of doing more of that. But the thing that I'm most excited about is just getting to meet and talk to more designers and helping them build better businesses over the next 12 months. So that's really the next, 12 months. Not too busy, not much going on there. So
Well, they're just good goals to have, right? And you can
yeah.
just see the core of family and the way that your story is actually really inspirational,
Oh,
and the
thanks,
way
Kat.
that you've had those, from working for yourself to actually working in teams and being the manager of a big team and then coming back for yourself with family starting. What an incredible story, and it's actually quite inspirational. It really is. So on behalf of my listeners of the Design Dialogue podcast, Beth Bixby, thank you very much for joining us on today's podcast and sharing your story. And at this point, I would take the honour of handing the microphone back to yourself.
Oh, thanks, Gavin. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you. Thank you for listening to this Design Dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how More Time to Design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next Design Dialogue.